Hello and welcome. This is Grant Hughes of Grant Hughes Investigates on YouTube. This channel evaluates all aspects of true crime. As you are aware, videos and live streams in this genre often discuss elements of crime that may be disturbing to some viewers. If necessary, take the precautions needed to avoid these feelings. Factual information related to cases is the key to fostering rational true crime discussions. Fortunately, you will find that here. Please hit the like button only once, share the video, and subscribe if you like my content. Thank you very much for watching. Yeah, I don't know why the dog camera's not working again. Who the hell knows why? No idea. Well, K-Me got us off with a rousing start. Thank you. All right. Well, we got the finish of the Tracy Nicks trial. So we're going to start off by playing that. Not sure why my name and everything's on the screen without me being there, but let me see if I can turn that off. Not sure what's going on. I don't know, maybe I'll just keep it like that. Alright, so we'll just play how it started today. With I think her husband, Tracy Nicks' husband, went on the stand. And then she went up on the stand but didn't really say anything. And then there was a verdict. And then there was an interview with the mother outside. Alright, so if you're out there also when we're watching this, if you could please help support the channel. We've had 2 terrible days in a row. And today, then I spent almost $300 getting the transcript for the sentencing in the Delphi case. So I'm really kind of like way behind at this point. So if you have the ability to, that would be great. Thanks.
May it please the court.
That's kind of loud. Hold on.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Thank you. State your name for the jury, please.
None, nay, Nix.
And Mr. Nix, you're the father of Kayla Nix.
Yes, sir.
You're the father of Rebecca Tucker.
Yes.
And you're the husband of Mrs. Nix.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And obviously you remember Yuri.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How often would you and or Tracy keep Yuri?
Depending on the week, anywhere from 2 to 5 days.
Okay. Can you give we'll say a normal routine on how that would occur, the pickup and the delivery?
Most often would be
And this was on Law and Crime right here. Hey, thanks Jamie S. and Linda Howell.
me going to their office to pick up the child.
Well, thank you, WNC Granny. Let's see, why would anyone leave their second child in... Right. I think this case turned out exactly how I thought it should. All right? 100%.
And then I would bring her back to the house, and that's where usually Tracy would pick up.
would pick up from there?
Yes.
Okay. And when you would drive to pick up Yuri, what vehicle would you drive normally?
Normally was my truck.
Normally.
Pickup truck, yes.
Did you ever drive the red Lexus?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in the evening, how would she get, we'll say, redelivered to her parents?
Normally was, her father, Drew, would normally come by after work.
Okay. And on occasion, did you drive the Lexus
Yes,
to either pick up or redeliver
pickup.
the child? Okay. And when you had the mirror adjusted to the back, were you able to see?
There's only like 28 minutes of this whole thing. This is the Tracy Nicks case. She's somebody that had a hot car incident where her daughter, spur of the moment, was like, "Hey, can you take care of my daughter for what bit? I got to go get a haircut." And then during that time, the grandmother was doing, really doting on the kid and everything like that. But on the way back home, she forgot that the child was in the back of the car, and it ended up dying in the heat in the back of the car. All right. And this lady is, was a teacher, church going, it's just one of those crazy, unfortunate things that happen. Now, a lot of people are trying to correlate an incident that happened a year before where in the same grandmother's care, another child died, but it actually wandered out of the house and crawled over to a pond, or like a holding retention pond, and drowned. It's completely different circumstances, completely unrelated. It's just one of those things where, oh my God, what a crazy, you could say coincidence, but people want to connect it. And as we've seen in many cases out there, there are coincidences that happen. I mean, ones that are way more bizarre than that. I can tell you that. So.
The car seat from the back seat, driver's side?
No, sir, not for me.
Okay. Now, you're a little taller than Tracy.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you tell us, would Tracy be able to, from her viewpoint, from what you saw
What do you mean they kept what for weeks at a time?
on the Lexus?
Judging speculation. Sustained.
If you're looking out the back window from the rear view mirror,
Who cares, Vicky? She didn't dump the kid into the pond. Was that a smart thing to do? Probably not. But let's not. You keep trying to add extra sort of culpability and trying to. Everybody goes out of their way to try to assign extra guilt to somehow say to themselves, "I would never do that." But you know what? By the way, there was a comment under last night's show where this one lady said, she drove her kid and then forgot to drop her kid off and then left the kid in the car, and then 10 minutes later realized, oh my God. So she was one of the lucky ones, like my buddies that I was golfing with, who remembered in enough time to save the child. I mean, it sucks, but I think it's way more common than people want to admit to. Oh, that child, you didn't word it that way.
is your view going to be the same as hers if it's properly adjusted?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever, we'll say, have a situation where you got into the car and it was adjusted for Tracy?
Yes.
And y'all have some issues?
And I think there's people in this chat right now that had something similar happen on a sort of a lesser thing, but they won't admit it. I would bet money on it. Like something like, oh my God, yeah, this one time I took my kid somewhere and then I totally forgot. I walked out of the store, went headed to my car, and then I realized, oh my God, they were in there.
Issues about that sometime?
Some minor discussion.
Okay. All right, thank you.
State, any cross? Briefly, Your Honor.
Mr. Nix, I just have a few questions for you. As far as the vehicle, the Lexus, it has windows, right?
Yes.
You can see through those windows?
Yes.
No further questions.
All right.
Now, what does that have to do with anything?
Yes, sir. On the day in question, could you see through those windows?
Yes.
And on the day in question, before Yuri was found in the back seat, were you near that vehicle on your lawnmower?
Yes.
And could you look into the vehicle?
Not from where I was seated on the lawnmower,
Okay, and why was that?
because
Wasn't that just really incredibly sad? Like, people are out and about doing stuff around the house, and there's that child inside the car, unable to defend themselves. See, that's why it's different than the other child. This is one that, was put into, the grandmother was in charge of taking care of her, and the other child before. But in this case, had sole responsibility to, make sure that the child gets out of the car and into the house, et cetera, et cetera. The other incident, the child on its own did things that put himself in danger. You see how that's a difference there? It's not a similar thing. It's like, okay, yes, maybe the mother took a sleeping pill or whatever, or the grandmother, but the child itself crawled out and escaped out of the house, and something that you wouldn't think it would be able to do. But remember that other case that we had maybe, 2 years ago, where that one child was missing. People thought it was a predator, but it turns out this child, he was 2 years old, somehow was able to open a door, get out, and then they found the child dead out in the woods. And it's just, that's where it's different. Yes, she was there as the caretaker at the time, but it's not sort of a direct, hey, this is your fault 100% type of thing. I don't know, it's hard to explain it, but it seems like it's pretty obvious if you just think about it.
I was located a small distance from the car at approximately the same height as the driver.
Okay,
And by the way, why are there only 110 people watching here? I mean, this is just getting stupid.
and you could not see the child?
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right. You may be excused. Fletcher, may he be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Nix. State, defense, call your second witness.
I don't agree with you, Buc-ee. You always have a contradictory opinion without really thinking through it, like other people do.
Come to a sidebar with the court.
All right, let's see. So I'm just going to move. They're just kind of in there talking. I'm not sure what they're talking about. That's the mother and the dad. This guy is actually pretty amazing because, I mean, these guys have a strong marriage. For him to stay with her, makes it, he doesn't blame her or anything like that. And I guess they've had another kid that's 5 months old now.
So maybe around about 25 minutes. So please take your time to go to your cars, do what you need to do, but please be back in about 20 minutes.
All rise.
Oh, really? I guess I'd have to go read that.
You may be seated.
All right, everyone have a seat. Defense, do you have any motions you need to make? Do you have any motions you need to make, defense?
Yes, sir, renew our motion for judgment of acquittal made into the state's case.
All right, same ruling as,
I'm sorry, with a further caveat that verdict in this case would be against the weight of the evidence.
All right, with that, it's still denied unless the state
No, they haven't lost 3 children.
wants me to go over any other argument.
No, Your Honor, stick with relying on previous argument.
Okay, let's bring Ms. Nix up here. Let's get her sworn in.
They're just completely different situations. That's what the what I'm trying to get at.
They're on the stand.
But hey, can you guys please help support the channel tonight? Trying to recoup some of the funds, the $300 I spent on the transcripts, and also make up for. I mean, we're not going to be able to make up for it because I can just tell. But the last 2 nights, I mean, just absolute struggle. I mean, way behind for the month now.
Please, you want to understand? You want to understand?
So if you can either buy me a coffees or just do super chats, whatever it is, I would appreciate it.
Get Ms. Nix sworn in, please.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you
By the way, the mom's faces and her reactions and stuff in the courtroom, you know, completely don't match. I mean, they just don't match up with how she is outside when she's doing the interview.
got it. I do.
Hey, thanks, WNC Granny.
Ms. Nix.
Kathy Swan was gifted one.
All right, so Ms. Nix, state your name for the record.
Tracy Ann Howard Nix.
Okay, this is a criminal trial brought by the state of Florida versus Tracy Nicks, CF 22-289, Hardy County. You're the defendant in this action, and you've chosen not to testify. Is that correct?
Yes,
Is that of your own free will and volition?
it's on my lawyer's judgment.
Okay, so you're relying upon your lawyer's judgment not to testify.
Correct.
And you understand you have the independent right to override that judgment and to testify. Yes or no?
Yes,
So you understand that this is your ship and you're the captain of it. And you can testify if you so choose to, but you're relying upon the advice of your attorney. You're saying not to testify.
yes,
But it's your decision to make individually.
yes,
And you're still choosing not to testify.
yes.
Based on the hesitation, I'd like to take a short conference.
So I guess they must have talked, but I don't think she did anything. She decided not to do it still.
You ready, Judge?
All right, yes.
All rise.
All right, everyone have a seat.
See, I'm not sure what her faces are for. You know?
We're back on the record for State of Florida versus Tracy Nicks, CF 22-289. Members of the jury, did y'all reach a verdict? Who's if my foreperson would raise their hand and hand the verdict to the bailiff.
Let me do it like this way right here. With
All right,
this one or
Vince,
that one?
please
There we
rise.
go.
Mrs. Nix, please rise.
That's how it's supposed to be.
All right, we're going to go ahead and publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the 10th Judicial Circuit of Florida in and for Hardy County, State of Florida versus Tracy Howard Nix, case number CF 22-000-A000-XXW. Verdict form.
I don't agree at all, Zozo. I think people, when they start doing that, just like you guys, I mean, not you, but like, well, I don't know, some of you guys in the chat, because there's another one, they go, oh, there's got to be something, and then it makes you might think differently and go for something higher. And that's exactly why it needed to be removed, because it's too prejudicial.
We, the jury, find as follows as to count
Thanks,
one of the
Michelle
charge.
Tishel.
The defendant, Tracy Howard Nix, is not guilty. We, the jury, find as follows.
That was for the, let me go back, I'll just.
find as follows as to count 1 of the charge. The defendant, Tracy Howard Nix, is not guilty. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2 of the charge. The defendant, Tracy Howard Nix, is guilty of leaving a child in a motor vehicle in excess of 15 minutes, causing great bodily harm. So,
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Don't read anymore.
that sounds like the
All
right one.
Thank you. Mr. Fletcher, you wish the jury to be polled?
No, Your Honor.
State, you wish the jury to be polled?
No, Your Honor.
I'm going to release the jury.
No objection.
All right, all rise. Members of the jury, I want to give you
But my problem is, I have a problem with it anyways. You know, even though that's the right one and it's the lower one, it's not the 30 years. Maximum is 5 years on this one. I still have problems with it because it feels strange for me when you punish somebody and they don't even know that they're doing anything wrong at the time. Her mind just failed her at that time. Now you might go, well, God, I mean, that's not, well, it's not that common to last that long, but it does happen. And the thing is everybody has those moments. And I don't think so at all, Kathy. She was very arrogant today. Jesus, where do you come up with this stuff?
your final instruction. Hold on one second. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for your time and consideration of this case. I also wish to advise you of some very special privileges enjoyed by jurors, such as yourself. No juror can ever be required to talk
Hey,
about
look at that, Pam Bondi.
the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon jurors for
I don't know. That's the question. But I mean, should somebody spend 5 years in prison when they literally had no malice in them at all? No anything? It's literally like, I guess if you're just throwing a baseball against the wall and then the baseball bounces back over your head, hits a car, and then the car swerves and hits a tree and 14 people, is it really, hey, that's reckless? I mean, in that case, you're even throwing a ball and possibly you could realize something would happen. But see, the thing is, there's no intent. There's not even obviously everybody knows, hey, if you leave the child in the car, they are, it's dangerous. Okay. But the problem is her mind completely made her forget that there was a child in that car. So then you go, well, what is it that she did, like in terms of wrong intentionally, and I guess it doesn't have to be intentional, but it makes you just kind of, I want people who are bad people in prison. Okay.
consideration of difficult cases. We have recognized for hundreds of years that a jury's deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain their private.
Yeah, I was going to say this lady right here reminded me of Pam Bondi right here. This lady that's doing this, the court reporter.
Affair as long as they wish it. Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to speak about the jury's work. Although you are at liberty to speak with anyone about your deliberations, you are also at liberty
Although Pam Bondi
to
is pretty
refuse
good.
to speak to anyone. A request to discuss either your verdict or your deliberations may come from those who are simply curious, from those who might seek to find fault with you, from the media, from the attorneys, and elsewhere. It will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. I want to thank you.
Yeah, I mean, they had a fallback. They had I just said that, M. Morgan. They have a fallback on the, for that second charge to give them something. They wanted to do something. And I think going to court with that original charge of, aggravated manslaughter or whatever the hell it was ludicrous. And it's an embarrassment, especially a trial that lasted a day and a half. That means they were just trying to get something to work. It's almost like they put it out there knowing it really isn't going to fly, but see if it could stick. And it didn't. But they didn't really try to make it stick. So in some way you might think that they kind of didn't really want to do the 30 years because they really didn't sit there and spend the time to convince a soul. I mean, it was ludicrous, really. All the witnesses that got up there, was there anything at all that pointed to anything other than her just not remembering? It seemed like a lot of the people were saying how nice she was, and I don't know, it was really weird, strange case.
On behalf of the citizens of Hardee County and Polk County for spending your time with us, thank you very much for your time and consideration. You may be excused.
Beaver, nope.
All right, all, once they leave, have a seat, and I'll have the defendant proceed to the podium with their attorney.
That lady's 59. I seem like I feel like I look younger than she looks.
Okay?
Once here.
Right there.
Now, who are you talking about? Pam Bondi or this one? I don't know how. This lady's 65, isn't she? I don't know.
Okay. Ms. Nix, and that's your attorney, Mr. Fletcher. Everyone can have a seat.
See, look at that
Mr.
face. Look at that
Fletcher,
face. Look at that
Tracy
face.
Nicks, having been found guilty by
What's that face
the jury
for?
as to the charge of leaving the child unattended in the vehicle for more than 15 minutes, contained in case number CF 22-289, I now find you to be guilty of the offense. State what's your position on remand or bond.
Your Honor, she's been convicted at this point.
I don't want to, and nor do I care what they think about it. That's why I'm so happy that the first incident wasn't put in this case. Completely unrelated, was even investigated at the time. Now people want to connect it so they can pretend that this lady's some sort of a serial killer, because it makes it more interesting.
I would ask that she be taken into custody.
Defense position on remand or bond.
Your Honor, I request that she be allowed to be out on bond until we have a sentencing hearing. I do that, will be requesting
Yeah, they were just talking to each other.
a
I don't even know what you're saying, Cindy. Your sentence sucked.
less than guideline sentence. I will request, based on my experts, that you partially heard that her sentence be below guidelines. I have also had my office contact the bail bondsman. He is willing to remain on the bond. I can tell you that as an officer of the court. There's plenty of time to incarcerate her. I do need her also to be able to prepare for sentencing.
All right, state anything further.
And further, Judge, she's been on pretrial release for over 2 years. There hadn't been a second's problem with her. She's been to every court appearance that we've had, and I see no reason to remand her at this time.
State anything further.
No, the state stands by its previous position.
All right, a sentencing date of April 3rd at 8:30 a.m. Does
Why'd
that
they wait? April 3rd? I mean, good Lord, man. That's like almost 2.5 months away.
work with state?
It's such a simple thing.
Defense, does that work with defense?
Same as the state, will make it work.
All right. At this point in time, based upon the jury verdict of guilty, I'm remanding you into custody, Ms. Nix. You are to be with the sheriff pending the pre-sentence investigation report by the Florida Parole and Probation Commission. Your bond is hereby revoked. You will be held at no bond. I hereby order the Florida Parole and Probation Commission to prepare a pre-sentence investigation report upon the defendant and furnish same to the court as soon as practicable. You will appear April 3rd, 2025 in the Hardee County Courthouse at 8:30 a.m. I've set aside a full day for the sentencing. I'd ask the defense and the state to be prepared to present their arguments and testimony that they feel is appropriate to have this court sentence Ms. Nix in accordance with this verdict. Anything further, state?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything further, defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, all rise. I'm going to get off the bench. Come on, outside.
No, he does not want to be outside. I think just let you know.
I mean, I feel bad for Tracy's mom and the sister.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, court is adjourned. Everybody can exit the courtroom now, please.
I mean, it's a shitty case all around. I mean, I feel bad for everybody, losing the children, the families are all broken apart. There's all kinds of crap that's happened. But hey, I'm going to ask again, everybody, can you please help support the channel? We're currently at 1/8 again of a normal nightly goal. Is there any chance that you guys can, support anywhere like what we used to get? I mean, we are, this is, when you look at This right here, look at. We gave him $229,000 out of the income, and we're at $500 this year so far. It's the year just started. But I need your guys' support to be able to keep doing these live streams. All right, we're currently at $34.99. So, and 0 coffees, nothing. So I'm not sure what to say, you guys. I'm doing the same shows that I've always done. So please help. All right, thanks.
Thank you. You said it. Okay. You're gonna finish your coffee? This judge aware?
Yeah. I'm gonna cut
I can have a couple of
I don't know what that means. I'm dying. What does that mean?
Hi. I have no idea how to start this. Help me, Kylie.
Yeah, look at just boom, right outside the door, just a totally different look or anything. No, you know what it reminds me of, guys? Mary Lou. You know, when I have Mary Lou bawling, and then immediately just done. But what do you mean I'm dying, Cindy? What does that mean?
I was relieved to hear that there was going to be accountability and ownership and a conclusion to this part of this story. One of the things that we have struggled with through this whole case has been the exclusion of my other story, which is my son that drowned in her care. And so for us, this is a win for Yuri. But I have a son named Ezra, and he has not been spoken of. And
I know it's an expression. It just doesn't seem to be appropriate nor fit that comment.
he died in her care, and I don't have any account.
That's what I think, Daphne, when she was in the courtroom. It doesn't really matter. It's just like, I mean, it is what it is. Things to her, both her kids were, you know, that happened to them. But it seems like she's kind of lost something, you know, just sort of, it's more about the appearance and media, that kind of thing.
Accountability or any answers for that, and I continue to look for those answers to what happened in that case and why that case was not worthy of prosecution at that time. So we're going to be going back in with the state and having a few more conversations to see, but in this moment we are relieved. The daughter and me had a very hard time with her being taken, and I ended up stepping aside for that moment, and it isn't something that I would ever call a win for me. It is a win for justice for my daughter, and we are grateful to the jurors that spent their time, to all the experts, to all the police and EMTs and every person that played a hand in this trial. We are truly grateful for your consideration and your time and the energy you guys have spent, as well as you guys from the media. I'm truly grateful for giving my story a voice and yeah, giving our kids a chance for the world to see that they were incredibly wanted and loved and valued to us.
To hear the guilty on one count, not guilty on another, how do you guys view that?
For it being not guilty, it does sting. I'm thankful though that we did get something. I didn't want to walk out of there and see her walk away like she's been for the past 2 years and just being out and about. I was glad to see that the jury did see our side of it, even though they didn't push for the maximum sentence. It was still, like I said, a form of justice.
Well, and as her daughter, I've struggled the whole time with understanding why there couldn't just be that ownership and what did happen. Like, why did we do this? the destruction that has come from this process is.
I think what's going to happen is he just wants her to have prison time, and she'll serve the time up until sentencing, and then maybe give her 8 more months and call it a year, something like that.
Pretty unfathomable as well. You know, my kids are dead, but I've lost a lot more than that.
My son's lost a brother, my son's lost a sister.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? We look at it from that perspective, and it's, you know,
we advocate for our children.
Yeah.
Talking with the assistant state attorney, was there any indication on what she was found guilty on and how much time she could potentially be looking at for a sentence?
He was saying the maximum for the conviction that she had was 5 years, but he was very unsure whether or not they were going to arrest her.
Go
there.
into further details and all of the. It kind of played out in front of us.
But the thing
we didn't
is,
have much time to take that in.
The judge knew of my son's story. You know what I mean? The judge was very familiar with it, and I think that
so he was biased.
Even though the jury didn't know, the judge was very familiar with it, and so
her defense was prepared to shut down a case containing
Or
Ezra,
maybe it'll
which is why they had so many hearings, and ultimately.
I mean, it could just be the time served plus 5 years probation or something.
He was excluded from this trial.
Over the last couple days, I mean, there were so many moments and obviously so many emotions. I'm wondering if there are any particular moments that stick out to each of you as you were hearing person after person come up and testify.
I was deeply saddened when my sister had to testify. This trial process has been complicated, but it broke my heart to see her and to have it brought back to memory that there was personal events in their life that day that she had damaged in her world as well. And I adore my son or my nephew, Aiden, and I hate so deeply that he's traumatized by this, including the court process, including all of this, because he's a teenager. And I think that I struggled the most with her testimony, and also just listening to the recording of my mom, I think, go on a long time about where she was going,
and the fact
what was she going to do, and never hearing, oh my God, Yuri, oh my God, my granddaughter, where's my granddaughter, what happened to her?
It was her keeping the information from us instead of telling us. That was.
And we are happy ultimately with what the state provided for us in terms of this case with Ezra, or with Yuri. And I continue to look for a way to address my son Ezra's issue, because it's something I feel worthy of attention.
How does the family move on from here?
I don't know, WNC Granny. It works for everybody else.
We got our son Asher, and we just had a newborn. She is fixing to be 5 months old now, and so we focus on those, and we focus on building. We are always going to be thinking of our children, but I can't neglect my son that I have, and I'm not going to hurt them. It's a day at a time, in a sense.
And when it comes to my family, I mean, that is complicated. In this process, due to certain circumstances, I was already pretty well distanced from them. There are some family members I haven't spoken to in years, and that breaks my heart, and I would want nothing more for that to be different. But the damage has been felt in that way greatly, and I don't know how we recover. I want that. I want us to have a family. But right now it seems very complicated. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, well, that's it. All right, well, let's see. I don't know if anybody heard what I said earlier, though, but I'm looking for support for the channel tonight. I can't have 3 nights in a row of just absolute oblivion. So if you like the content here, at least I go out and try to find the stuff for everybody, and so we can go over it. Not sure what else I can say. This is the article we were looking at last night regarding this one. So this is the one. This is when we were covering the case about what's the date on here? Like almost 2 years ago. It said Tracy Nicks was practicing the piano while her infant granddaughter was dying in the backseat of an SUV. According to the Hardee County Sheriff's Office complaint affidavit, Tracy, 65, told a detective that after she drove home from lunch with friends on November 22nd, she just forgot about 7-month-old Uriel Shock. Uriel mother, Kayla Nix, had gone to get her hair done that day and asked her mom to babysit. It wasn't until one of Tracy's grandsons arrived, the complaint affidavit said, that all of a sudden it came across her head. That's exactly how it works, by the way. Something that triggers a, oh my God, that kind of thing. That Ariel had been in the SUV all afternoon. Her husband, Nunne Nix, immediately began CPR. Temperatures in Washula had reached 90 degrees that day. The Lexus SUV was parked in the yard with the windows rolled up. Tracy, a former school principal in Hardee County, was charged with aggravated manslaughter. It's just ludicrous. The pre-trial hearing is scheduled for March 28th. Uriel's death is prompting her parents, Kayla and Drew Shock, to share their family story with ABC Action News I-Team after identifying their daughter at the hospital. Drew said he remembers standing in the parking lot trying to grasp what happened. To think of that last moments of her life as a moment is gut-wrenching, Kayla said. And that has actually just effing happened twice in our lifetime, Drew said. Twice is less than a year. One family, 2 kids, their deaths, both while in their grandmother's, Tracy's, care. Kayla and Drew grew up in Washula, small town in Hardee County. They reconnected 5 years ago after what began as a high school friendship. They soon decided to have kids and raise their children where they had roots. This was the plan. We were going to have 3 kids, and you know what I mean, that was our goal, Drew told I-Team. It's really difficult to know that my mom is the one that, broke his heart, Kayla said, handing Drew a tissue. My son, my mom, so that's them back then. My mom. Kayla said her son's story has gotten lost in her daughter's. Uriel's 16-month-old brother, Ezra, also died while he was at the grandmother Tracy's home. He drowned in a nearby pond. Drew got the call from Kayla's father 3 days before Christmas in 2021. He goes, something's happened to Ezra, Drew said, who then called Kayla. She said she rushed to her parents' home as fast as she could, driving 85 miles an hour on country roads. I could see the helicopter landing, Kayla said. I didn't look when there was a stop sign. Kayla was 6 months pregnant at the time, was in a head-on, and she was obviously pregnant with the girl that died. That's who she was pregnant with. Was in a head-on crash with another driver. All of my airbags went off. I don't remember, and what a crazy coincidence that is, I got out and started running to my parents' house at this point. I don't have shoes. I'm just running, Kayla said. That was my desperation to get to my son. Kayla said during the investigation into her son's death, her doctor told her she needed to make a choice. They withheld information from me per my request, per my doctor's advice, that any information that would work me up or make me emotionally distressful would be harmful to my unborn child, Kayla said. And I knew in that moment that as much as I loved him, that she was a real life, and she was coming, and it would be wrong for me to lose her over him and over him, meaning the child that died, and hurt her and take her. Kayla said That's kind of just weird wording and stuff. Kayla said everything happened so fast. There wasn't a moment to get a grip of the death of my son before there was the life of the daughter, and how beautiful is that. Her name is Uriel, and its Hebrew name, it means God is my light, and she came out so small. She was beautiful and just radiant. Kayla and Drew had never seen the incident report detailing how Ezra drowned the afternoon his grandmother, Tracy, fell asleep. A detective wrote that a complaint affidavit for child neglect would be filed and forwarded to the state attorney's office for further review. Kayla said it wasn't until charges were filed against her mother in the death of her daughter, Uriel, that she learned that they had attempted to file charges in her son Ezra's death. Alright, so I think didn't I download this yesterday? I think we should I want to read this one. Just got to put it in the right place. Didn't that, I think I put it in the wrong place. Yeah. Alright. Alright, anyways, I gotta use the restroom here. There we go. So how do I do it, you guys? How do we get to where we're back to getting support for the channel? Yeah, I'm just trying to do the same shows and something's not happening. I have no idea, man. No idea. Now, this is the other. I responded to the incident location, a dwelling property, in reference to a child drowning incident. I don't think so, Jessica. Last January was a good one. There was no reason. But yeah, maybe. Who knows? I don't know, man. I'm getting close to giving up. EMS was on scene, tending to the victim on the arrival. The homeowner, and the trolls will get their wish, okay? I'm just getting so tired. Show after show after show, and just, you know. The homeowner, none named Nix, was outside, and he told me his wife, Tracy Nicks, was inside changing clothes. I determined the following series of events based on statements made to me by Nix and their neighbor. The victim was being supervised by his grandparents, Mr. and Mrs. Nix, at their home. No one else was at home. There is a large pond that is stocked with ducks located on the west side of their property within feet of their home. Mr. Nix was rocking the victim in a recliner in the living room. So that's Mr. Nix. His wife was on the adjacent sofa. Mr. Nix stated he left the victim sleeping in the recliner and left his wife, who he said was awake, to go to Walmart and run some errands. Mrs. Nix corroborated this, but told me that she drifted off to sleep and was not awake when her husband left. At some point, Mr. Nix awoke and couldn't find the victim. She told me the garage entrance door was ajar. She searched outside for the victim and drove her vehicle to the end of the driveway and looked down something or other. At some point, she called her husband and informed him she couldn't find the victim. She said as she turned around to drive back to the residence, she saw the victim's face down in the pond. She drove over to him and pulled him out of the water and started CPR that she had been trained on from working for the school. She did not call 911. A neighbor heard her screaming and told me he saw Mrs. Nix giving CPR to the victim on the ground. He said her vehicle was parked along the fence in the front yard, consistent with the statement. He never saw the victim in the water, nor did he see Mrs. Nix pull the victim from the water. Now let's see. He stated when he returned to the yard, Mr. Nix had arrived and joined Mrs. Nix in performing CPR. Mr. Nix consented for me to enter his home. He showed me the living room layout and described where everyone was stated. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's that's basically it. I mean, that's, you see what I'm saying? It just doesn't sound like it's some crazy, I mean, it's a little bit both their faults, wouldn't you agree? Kayla told the I-team she will never forget what a deputy told her. I was told unless I believe that my mom held my son's head under the water and intentionally killed him, that there's nothing else that they can do about my son's death. In a statement, the state attorney's office told the I-team in cases involving the accidental drowning of a toddler, Florida appellate courts have stated that one-time lapse of judgment would not establish culpable negligence of the caretaker. However, if the caretaker was shown to have repeatedly allowed the toddler access to the water hazard and not taken steps to prevent that, would establish culpable negligence. So that's, see how they're not even related to two incidents. In the 2021 incident, there was insufficient evidence to establish culpable negligence. Well, it's obvious because the kid just got out and made its way to the pond. It wasn't like they're... In the 2021 incident, there was insufficient evidence to establish culpable negligence. The 2022 incident is factually distinguishable and charges have been filed. Right, there you go. That's exactly what I've been saying. The 2022 incident is factually distinguishable, meaning it's different. Kayla and Drew said that Ezra's death They didn't trust Tracy at all after. Yeah, so they said after Ezra's death, they didn't trust Tracy, the grandmother, at all, and would never let their 4-year-old firstborn child go to their grandparents' home. But wouldn't that be the one that you would let go there because they're a little older, you know? Why would you, somebody that's even more like an infant would be less likely that you would let the parent the grandparents take care of them, or if you've already got suspicions that they're not, I don't know, you guys know what I'm saying, right? I mean, a infant is completely in the care of and relies on the caretaker, where a 4-year-old, you know, they can move around and, you know, so that's kind of contradictory to what I would think. We were anxious, but I love my mother, and I am a daughter that wanted her mom in her life in some capacity, and in that moment, I thought that I could believe in second chances, Kayla said. When I was told that Ezra's death was an accident, some sliver child part of me thought, okay, good. I get to keep this mom, this grandmother, this person. Kayla and Drew were protective. The very minor amount of time that she saw my daughter was almost always supervised, Kayla said, for the mom. On Muriel's last day, Kayla said she knew her mom's plans. Yuri was at a restaurant with other people that I knew and trusted. They were in the friend group and were keeping her safe. And I had supervised many, many interactions at this point at my house, Kayla said. Within hours, someone from the Hardy County Sheriff's Office showed up at her house. He said, "Your baby is dead." And I said, "I'm sorry, what?" "I know Ezra's dead. Why are you here like that?" "Like what? What is this?" "No, Kayla, your baby is dead." "You couldn't fathom it happened twice," Drew said. "Somebody has to answer for that." Right. And so you notice how once you say twice, everyone goes, "Oh, you got to pay," even though they are completely different instances. Hey, thanks. Oops. Fletcher told the I-Team that Nix will not be making any public statements. This is back then. Tracy loves her daughter and her son-in-law and all of her children and her grandchildren, Fletcher said, adding that she is totally devastated by their death. Fletcher said he chose to take on the case because it was so incredible. "I couldn't conceive as a parent when, as a parent, when my child was growing up, I always worried, I was almost obsessed that something would happen. How anybody handles that, I don't know. And I know that mom here has 2 children who have to deal with it, and I can't conceive of the pain." He continued, "I got a couple grandkids, and you feel the same way about your grandkids, so the parents are hurting, but the grandparents are hurting too. So there's no winners here. Certainly no winners." Yeah, I totally agree with that. Fletcher said, "If found guilty, Tracy could be sentenced to 12 to 30 years in prison. If I'm objective, she needs to go to prison. As her daughter, it kills me to say it. As their mother, I demand it," Kayla said. "I will fight for them." Drew said the whole reason they shared their story is that they want justice. Yeah, you wanted to, get the mob behind, and once you find out there's 2, everybody, that's why it was removed from the case. Because knowing about the second one makes people believe something more nefarious. Kayla said she would want Ezra and Uriel to know that they loved them and that we're sorry because they were beautiful children and they were taken by someone that we believe was worthy of trust. But yeah, how about this, you guys? We only got 1 channel member in here. Can you guys do a wave on channel memberships at least? Maybe we can get some new channel members. Something. And it still helps support the channel, but maybe there's a possibility these people might stay around the next month. You never know. So anyways, that's the, that was that story back then. And I think did everybody in here watch the earlier show when we went over the sentencing hearing? Yeah, the sentencing hearing for Richard Allen. Because I was going to read it again for people in the evening. It's pretty interesting, I think. I'm not sure if you're interested or not. I don't have much more to... The other case I'm done talking about. Hey, thanks, Michael. Okay, cool. Well, I'll just read it again then. But while I'm reading it, can you guys please help support the channel? Because I just want to keep reading it. And then after a while, when we get an hour going and there's no support, I just, you know... it's going to take longer than... how long have we been on here? We've been on here for an hour and 1 minute. So we got another hour, and I won't be able to get through it in an hour. And to get to that third hour... I don't know. These little goals that I set, you guys hardly ever hit them, so it's hard to do it. You know, we're at 2 at 20. But I spent $300 just on this one little 34-page document. And we're not, the last 3 days combined, we're not even at that. That's how shitty it's been. All right, so if you guys have the ability to, that would be great. Thanks. Let's see. Yeah, and here's the... Oh, there's actually the bill. So I'd pay $195, and then I had to pay $90 for the gas to go to Delphi. You know what happened though? The lady that does these has now changed it where you have to send in a letter and do it all through the mail now. It's just, man, it just sucks. It's like a ghost town in here, man. Unreal. All right. So let's just go straight down to here. The judge, Honorable Francis C. Gold. And Jody Williams is the reporter, the court reporter. Is like, well, you got to send letters now and do this and that, and let's make it as hard as possible to get anything. It's insane. All right. The court. So this is Judge Gould. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are on the record in State of Indiana versus Richard Allen. I'll show the defendants here in person with counsel. The state is here by the elected prosecutor and his deputies. We are here for sentencing. Thank you for sentencing memorandum submitted by counsel. I believe it was yesterday or Wednesday, excuse me. Are we ready to proceed? Mr. McClellan? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Rosie? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Allen, for the record, would you state your full name and age for me, please? Richard Matthew Allen, and I'm 52. The court. And you are the same Richard Matthew Allen who was found guilty following a trial by jury? Yes. The court is Judge Gould. You're here with your attorneys, Mr. Rosie and Miss Auger and Mr. Baldwin. Are you satisfied with the manner in which you've been represented? Yes. That's a lie right off the bat. Then the court said, have you seen the pre-sentence investigation report? Yes, I have. Or just yes. Have you had a chance to review that report and to speak with your attorneys about it? Yes, I have. And Judge Gould said, are there any additions or corrections to make to the report? The defendant, Richard Allen said, very, very minimal. Nothing of, what would those be, Rosie? Richard Allen said, nothing important. And then Mr. Rosie said, Judge, just, excuse me. And then Richard Allen said, sorry. For what? I don't know. Mr. Rosie said, just referencing page 2 of 9, at the top, the arrest date as reflected in October 28th. October 28th is when the public knew of his arrest. And it's actually October 26th, so that was the actual date. And so we would just ask that you add 2 more days to the credit time, which would increase that from 784 to 786 days, and that's the totality of the change. Judge Gould said, so with that correction of your jail credit, Mr. Allen, the pre-sentence report is as accurate as possible. Or is it as accurate as possible? The defendant said, yes, ma'am. And Judge Gould said, Mr. Rosie's sentencing argument. Mr. Rosie, Judge, the defense would rest on the assertion in the memorandum we filed with the court. Let's see, Mr. McClellan, Judge, the state would like to call one witness to the stand to testify, and then we have a series of 6 unsworn statements from the victims' families for the court to consider. And then Judge Gould said, okay, Mr. McClellan, and so the first witness the state would like to call is Lieutenant Jerry Holman, please. Mr. McClellan said, thank you, Judge. Direct examination of Lieutenant Jerry Holman. Questions by Mr. McClellan. Mr. Holman, will you state your name, please? Jerry Holman, Holeman. Are you employed? I'm employed with the Indiana State Police. And you became involved in the investigation of the death of Abigail Williams and Liberty German back on February 14, 2017. Is that correct? Yes, I did. And a day after they went missing? Yes. And since that time, you've been heavily involved in the investigation throughout this 8-year period. Is that correct? I and many law enforcement officers from many different agencies have poured our hearts and souls into this for the last 7 years and 10 months. Yes. And you also sat through trial here at counsel table with me. You were able to hear and see all the evidence that law enforcement gathered against Richard Allen. Is that correct? I have. And you had the opportunity, you had the opportunity, I'm actually reading how it says, not me making a mistake. It's part of the script. It said, and you had the opportunity to observe in detail the crime scene photos as well. Is that right? Unfortunately, yes. And safe to say you've investigated several murders throughout your career as a law enforcement officer? I have. And have you investigated murders that deal with children? A few, yes. And how does this compare to those other murders that you've investigated? This one was very brutal. Mr. Allen laid in wait. He stalked the girls. He kidnapped. He humiliated them. He treated them like animals. He used a gun to control them. It was obvious his intent was to assault them or molest them until he got interrupted. And then he forced them to take their clothes off at some point, made them walk across a frigid creek, again, treated them like animals, obviously killed one in front of the other. I can't imagine the fear and anxiety that they went through to watch that. And then he covered them with sticks and left them there alone and went to live his life like it never happened. And throughout your investigation, you spent a lot of time in the Delphi and Carroll County community. Is that safe to say? I have. Thanks, Sandy Shirley. Thanks for thinking of me. And you interviewed several people who live in this community. Yes, I have. Several people who are from this. Several people from this community. Yes. And did you see the effect that this murder had on the community? I did. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because of the brutality and the heinous crime that he committed. This is the answer by Holman. I think it definitely put a lot of fear and anxiety in the community. Family members were afraid, or members of the community were afraid to allow their family members to go out, so they took extra precautions. And because of Mr. Allen allowing his attorneys to use unethical strategies by falsely accusing you, I think he's actually now he's talking to McClellan, saying that they're accusing you of withholding evidence and falsely accusing police officers of being corrupt and lying. That also had an impact on the community, that the ones that supported the prosecution, they were getting threats. Family members of the victims were getting harassed and threats. And I mean, I'm just going to, on my own, I can tell you that me being somebody who was pro-prosecution, because the facts are pro-prosecution, it's just obvious. Anybody with a brain can see that. I get the same threats, from idiots like Rick Snay. I mean, he's one of the dumbest people on the planet. Literally like a dumb person who pretends to be so thoughtful. He threatens people physically all the time. So instead of actually trying to, to like argue what I'm saying, he talks about how he's going to beat somebody up. That's how lame that guy is. I mean, he's just a stupid piece of crap. Anyways, and because Mr. Allen allowing his attorney, I think where were we at? Being corrupt and lying, that also has an impact on the community, that the ones that supported the prosecution, they were getting threats. Family members of the victims were getting harassed and threats. Like I said, community members were getting threats. I don't know how many calls I received on people being harassed because they were supporting prosecution in the community. You and your family have been harassed, and many law enforcement officers and their families have been harassed and have received death threats because Mr. Allen allowed his attorneys to be unethical. Right, and so the whole thing regarding the Odin documents is what caused this horrendous situation, and it was completely bogus. Okay, now the stuff in it is true, like, yeah, people investigated those things, but there was no nexus to the crime. They were just trying to create some confusion and stuff, and then get the whole, because they know that people in general are conspiracy nutters, and so they all jumped on that bandwagon. Hey, thanks, Daniel Savoy. Appreciate it. So given everything that you learned through this investigation, everything you've learned through the case, do you have any recommendations of the court as to what is appropriate sentence for Mr. Allen? I do. I believe because he's so manipulative and persuasive, I think he's a danger to society. I think his lack of remorse, he says he wants to apologize to the victim's family members, but he hasn't yet. I hope today's that day. He also has used religion to manipulate his wife, his mother, and corrections officers. I hope he really has found God. I hope he confesses to all of his sins, and I hope he is forgiven someday. But I think it's just a tactic that he uses to manipulate people to get what he wants, i.e. when he breaks his iPad and he wants a new iPad, he wants transferred to a better facility, he wants visits with his wife, he uses those manipulation tactics to get what he wants. Hey, thanks for the coffee, Paulette. Everything that you've seen and heard, do you believe he's a danger to the community? I do. I believe that he exhibits all the traits that he would definitely be a danger and pose threats to people if he ever was able to be back in the community. Is there anything else you want the court to consider when fashioning a sentence for Mr. Allen? And the answer to that was no. Mr. McLuhan, I don't have any other questions, Judge. Mr. Rosie, no questions. The court, thank you, Lieutenant. You may step down. Mr. McLuhan, the judge, or Mr. McLuhan says, Judge, the state has no further witnesses, but I do have, as I said, 6 family members that would like to make an unsworn statement to the court for their consideration. If the court would allow me, I'd like to call them up at this time and allow them to make that statement. And then she said, you may. Oh, you did one earlier. I was just looking at that. Says you may. And then Mr. McLuhan said, thank you, Judge. State would first call Carrie Timmons. So that's Libby's biological mother. Carrie, before you get started, I'm going to let you know that microphone, I don't believe it's amplifies, so I'm going to need you to speak up in your best voice so that everybody can hear you, including the judge and the defense and the audience, okay? I'm going to ask you a few preliminary questions just to get your name and stuff on the record, and then I'll let you make your statement. So can you state your name, please? Carrie Timmons. And will you spell that last name for the record? Timmons. And you have a statement that you'd like to make to the court for consideration in sentencing, is that correct? Yes. Okay, go ahead. I struggled for weeks over writing, this is Miss Timmons. I struggled for weeks over writing this because I'm honestly not sure how to explain the path of destruction left in the wake of a decision made by Richard Allen on February 13, 2017. That day changed all our lives in so many ways forever. Liberty German was always my go-to for advice, her daughter. She somehow would always know exactly what to say in a situation, and I have no doubt that she is currently holding my pen. I had no problem getting the word out when he was just the bridge guy and had not been identified, but I honestly don't know how to process the fact that a husband and a father is capable of the horrendous acts of brutality inflicted upon our beautiful children. I was totally blind to the fact that such evil existed. I don't know which is worse, knowing or not knowing. The last 2,867 days have been absolute hell for Liberty German and Abigail Williams' family and friends. Next week, we should be celebrating our birthdays together. She would be 22, isn't that crazy? And she would be here. I quit celebrating after her 14th and my 39th. I can't help but see her grin at that, understanding the anxiety that she knew I had about turning the dreaded 40. As Liberty German's mom, and by the way, 40 is the new 60, right? I mean, or 60 is the new 40, I mean. 40 is like you're 20 years old. I had turning the dreaded 40. As Liberty German's mom, I'm left with so many what-ifs. I'm left without memories of her growing up, getting her driver's license and her first car, her first job. She didn't get to graduate and go to college. We were cheated out of seeing her be the best Annie. She doesn't get to fall in love, get married, and have babies. She was robbed of the opportunity to experience life and fulfill all of the dreams and aspirations that she already had at such a young age. I can't even put into words what it feels like to see other parents and their children get those things. For their lives to go on, for their lives to go on makes no sense to me. Yeah, it's like, shouldn't everybody's life stops when you're feeling so shitty? It sucks when you see other people and they're happy and everything's normal for them. You're like, hey, why can't I feel that way? I shouldn't be jealous of them, but I am. I can't understand how life managed to go on for everyone else while mine stopped. Instead of those memories and milestones, I am left with this massive grief, a literal hole in my soul, broken relationships, shattered hearts, and broken dreams. I struggle daily with guilt, crippling anxiety, complex PTSD, and severe depression, but continue to persevere in a world I don't want to live in without her. My daughters were robbed of their big sister, their children, their innocence, and life as they knew it. They had to grow up through so much turmoil. My daughter, Alex, turned 11 3 days after her sister's body was found on my grandmother's birthday. Birthdays are very hard for us, for all of us. I'll never understand how you were able to get away with this for so long. How can such evil hide in plain sight, continuing to walk down the streets lined with your picture, making a mockery of law enforcement? Our families, the community, and especially Liberty German and Abigail Williams for nearly 6 years. Only Richard Allen has those answers, and since you've claimed remorse and a need to apologize, I won't hold my breath waiting, but I deserve those answers. Liberty German and Abigail Williams deserve the entire truth. Hey, thanks, Timothy Cecil. The entire truth to come out, and I'm all ears. Please put me on your visitors list. I'll listen. God, I hope she doesn't go in there, because she's always been a little bit more conspiratorial minded. So you could see Richard Allen talking to her and convincing her. While there will never really be justice or closure, and nothing will bring my daughter back, I'm so very proud of her for not only exposing her and Abigail Williams' killer, but also for bringing much needed attention to so many cases near and far. This tragedy hasn't completely stopped Liberty German from accomplishing at least one dream from beyond her grave. Her courage and strength will live on as she guided us through this lifetime, and until we meet again, she will always be my sunshine. Mr. McClellan said, Carrie, is there anything else you want the court to know? No, thank you. All right, thank you. Thank you, ma'am, said Judge Gould. McClellan said, okay to go forward, Judge? The court said, you may. Mr. McClellan, okay, thank you, Judge. Judge, the state would call Josh Lank, please. Judge, do you want him at the podium or on the witness stand? Because people weren't here to hear it, Sandy. Why do you ask questions like that sometimes? It's just, you know, it always gives me sort of a, I don't know. You put me in a shitty mood sometimes when you say stuff like that. I don't know how to explain it. You make me not want to cover anything. Yeah, see, there's a lot of people that hadn't seen it or heard it before, and my live stream earlier has hardly any views either, and so we're just doing it again. Plus, I wanted to read it again, too, because there might be something in it. I got 35 pages. I paid the full amount because I was the first person to order it, so I had to pay like $5 a page. Yeah. Now, if somebody bought it later, it'd be $1 a page. So the transcripts for the trial, there's going to be 200 to 300 pages a day. So that'd be like, you know, if you get it for the $1, it'd be $300 a day, and then, you know, I think it's going to be like $5,000 or $6,000. So. But anyways, if you're out there, you guys, we're currently at a quarter of a nightly goal yet again. So, not sure what to tell you, but if you guys could please help support the channel. I don't know what else to say, you know. Right. I read it earlier today, and now I'm reading it again. All right. Right. Well, just think about what you're typing sometimes, Sandy. It's just, frustrating. You do that kind of stuff a lot, like little comments like you're questioning something. Just think through it, just... Hey, thanks, random bogey. Don't you hate getting those random bogeys? You're playing golf, you hit the ball down the middle of the fairway, your next shot lands on the green, you putt it, but you go a little too far, you're about 3.5 feet by, and you lip out that one. It just, No, Gray, I never missed those 3.5-foot comebackers. Okay. Okay to go forward, Judge. The court, you may. Mr. McLean, okay, thank you, Judge. The state would call Josh Lank. He spells his name, etc. He's Liberty German's first cousin, so that must mean, like, his mom or dad is the sister or brother of Carrie or the dad, Derek. Okay, no problem, Sandy. Just okay, go ahead, he said. Good morning, Your Honor. How are you today? That was pretty cool, right? And then Judge Gould said, good morning, I'm well, thank you. Probably had almost nobody ever asked her that. Mr. Lank says, first, I would like to start off by thanking the prosecution team and law enforcement. Without you guys and everyone involved in this case, the countless hours of your guys' time that was dedicated to this case, I truly can't thank you guys enough. You can tell from the beginning that this case was very important to them. They did everything they could to find justice for these two beautiful girls. Except get the Dan Doolin tip. I would also like to thank our little community. You guys have been so kind to our family with the love and support you have shown us, from painting the town teal and purple to feeding us every day throughout the trial. I seriously can't thank you guys enough. Our town may be little, but this goes to show that in time of need, our community pulls together. Liberty German was my first cousin, but the bond we had was a brother and sister type bond that nobody could break. When we were younger, we were together every day. It was like always Kelsey, Liberty German, my brother, and I. We would ride the bus to my grandma's house after school, and you would never know what kind of trouble we would get into. Liberty German, she was one of a kind. She would give the shirt off her back to someone that she thought needed it more than her. She was always trying to find ways to help people and make things easier on everyone. She truly was going to do great things in life. I will forever remember Liberty German by the amazing memories we made and not how Richard Allen left them on February 13th. That's a line from Doug Carter. Almost exactly. Not how you left them, right? He took so much away from both of these girls. They had amazing lives ahead of them. The pain he has put both of our families through could never be forgiven or forgotten. The things we had to see, we will never be able to unsee, all because of him. This man has made my life and my family's life a living hell for the past 8 years. Now it's time for your life to be a living hell. 23 hours a day, no communication, isolation from the world until you die. Richard Allen took two amazing little girls with so much life ahead of them from my family and the Williams family way too soon. And for his actions, I hope and pray he lives the rest of his life thinking of the mistakes he made that day. I would like to leave you with this. God doesn't have a place for sick, twisted-minded individuals like Richard Allen. Now, don't worry about it, Sandy. I got to keep you doing the show. God doesn't have a place for sick, twisted-minded individuals like Richard Allen. The devil has a special place in hell for him, and I hope the prison community can get him there quicker than the sentencing. Oh, sorry you're not feeling good. Let me know when you get an answer. I think there's nothing worse than when you're sick and you don't have an answer. Like you're just sort of like, okay, well, how come you guys can't tell me? Okay, the devil has a special place in hell for him, and I hope the prison community can get him there quicker than the sentencing. See, everyone wants him to be in general population. He is a dead man walking. Judge Gould, I ask you, take into consideration the max sentences with no parole. Hey, thanks, Stacy Pittman. There should be no way this man has a chance to get out of prison and be able to have the ability to do what he did, probably meant to say, again. Granting him no parole will solidify that. Then he probably starts walking away, and then Judge Gould says, thank you. Mr. Lank said, thank you. Mr. McClellan said, Judge, the state would call Diana Erskine, please, or Diane Erskine. Sorry about that. Will you? And that's what it says right there. He said Diana, but it's actually Diane. Will you state your name for the record, please? Diane Erskine. And will you spell your last name for the record? Erskin. Mr. McClellan said, and how are you related to the victim? I am Abigail Williams' grandmother. Mr. McClellan, and you have a statement you'd like to give the court for the court to consider for sentencing? Yes, sir. Go ahead, please. Miss Erskine said, good morning. Then Judge Gould said, good morning. Then Miss Erskine said, before I read my statement, I would just like to say on behalf of our family, this is not a day of celebration. We will not be going home and toasting champagne or high-fiving each other. This is a day of great sadness for all the families that are affected by this crime, all of the families. I find it impossible to share how this crime has impacted my life without talking about Abigail Williams, my first and only child. She brought so much joy to our family and held so much promise in her short life. She was especially kind to young children and elderly people and was often surrounded by both in our home. Her favorite phrase was, do you need any help? Yes, Abigail Williams, I sure could use your help right now. The first word that comes to mind when I think about February 13th, 2017 is terrified. Abigail Williams was not bold or brave, especially when it came to strangers or the dark. This is the word that wakes me up in the middle of the night, knowing what she faced, what she felt, what she suffered, what she saw in the final moments of her life. And can you imagine, you guys, just think about it for yourself. Like, let's say your kid or your sibling, and you know this happened to them, and you'll always know that they had a horrendous, basically almost a torturous last 20-something minutes of their life, and you know that that's what it was. It's not something, and I said it on the other show. I've said it like 400 times, but I think when this is the time when you have to revisit that thought process that I try to get you guys to think about, is that those moments in your life where you were absolutely terrified at something that was about to happen. Even if it's just your car and you, oh my God, you went through a red light and the car skidded and and your heart's beating really fast, or that time you're walking down the street and there's somebody approaching you and your heart starts beating really quick and you're just not really sure, or there's somebody coming up from behind you and your heart's beating really fast and you're just not really sure. But then all of us had that moment where we go, whoo, oh shit, that was so scary, man. And then you tell your friends, oh my God, this guy was walking. Okay, but in this case, they felt like that horror, that scared feeling when you see the guy coming, their hearts are beating quicker, and it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And one of them actually saw the other one get killed, and then they got killed, and the horror never got better. It got just worse, and the nightmare that we all think is about to happen actually did happen in their case. And so that's where, when you sit around by yourself and you're thinking about a case and you kind of let yourself go there and you think like that, that's when you go, oh shit. You know? And that's what she's kind of talking about right here. So I'll just go back to this part. Her favorite phrase was, "Do you need any help?" "Yes, Abigail Williams, I sure could use your help right now. The first word that comes to mind when I think about February 13th is terrified. Abigail Williams was not bold or brave, especially when it came to strangers or the dark. This is the word that wakes me up in the middle of the night." So the word terrified. Knowing what she faced, what she felt, what she suffered, what she saw in the final moments of her life. The next word that enters my mind, especially since the trial, is humiliated. And look how sad this part is, you guys. I think this was one of the best ones. Abigail Williams was a shy girl who blushed easily. She never dressed in a way that was revealing or drew attention to her figure. She would have been devastated by the number of people who have seen her in this most vulnerable state. I cringe every time I think about the photos that were not only shown for the purpose of the trial, but have shared as some sort of sick propaganda. Every detail of her final moments reveals a nightmare, one that we will relive, unfortunately, for the rest of our lives. Now, the thing is I would think she was humiliated during this act by Richard Allen, too, having to undress, etc. Mutilated. Our sweet Abigail Williams suffered first at the hands of a murderer and then to the process of an autopsy. I understand the medical and legal necessity for an autopsy, but until this trial, I was naive as to how invasive this procedure was. How will I ever erase the mental images I now live with? I could have left during this or any portion of the trial that was so graphically horrific, but Abigail Williams didn't get that choice. Her last words that I heard recorded on Liberty German's phone was, oh, it says phones, everybody. Ooh, here comes, did you see that? Ooh, the grandmother said phones. So there's multiple phones. Who was the other phone? That's how stupid these people are. Any chance they get. Okay, you see this part right here? Her last words that I heard recorded on Liberty German's phones, right? These people will go, oh, do you hear that? It's phones. There's multiple phones. That's how dumb their brains are. They think that that actually means something instead of it just being a typo or a misquote of some sort. You get it? It's crazy. Don't leave me up here. So let me read this part again. I could have left during this or any portion of the trial, during the graphic stuff, that was so graphically horrific, but Abigail Williams didn't get that choice. Her last words that I heard recorded on Liberty German's phone was, don't leave me up here. Liberty German didn't leave, so I didn't leave either. The last time I saw Abigail Williams, she and Liberty German were laughing and walking out the back door, her arms full of craft supplies they planned to use. I was washing dishes and called out and said, have fun. To this day, I have so much sadness for not stopping to hug her. The anxiety I feel every time one of my grandchildren leaves or I leave them is a lasting reminder of losing Abigail Williams. Every day since the day Abby was murdered starts the same. I wake up, make the bed, look at the clock, and calculated how many hours I have until I may return to it. I pray, breathe, make the most of the time that I have, knowing that I have now lived almost 5 times Abigail Williams' lifetime on Earth. Every night I climb back into bed, look at the clock, calculate how many hours I have left to sleep. Unfortunately, sleep is not an escape, but more often a task. I pray for a good dream, a visit with my loved ones who are waiting for me with Abigail Williams in heaven. Nightmares come anyway, and I seldom sleep through the night without waking at least once. Then begin the what ifs, or if the ifs only. You know, people start wondering if they had just done this and that. You know, like Becky's like, oh, if I just didn't let him go. The only people to blame are the killers and the nefarious actors. People should be able to go to a bridge if they want to. Women should be able to go to a park and jog if they want to. They should be able to do whatever the hell they want without having to worry about some psycho sitting there, okay? We need to get law and order back in the country. As I watch Abigail Williams' friends grow up, graduate from college, choose careers, and even begin having children, I can't help but wonder who she would have become in her life if it hadn't been taken. How many great-grandchildren were murdered that day? That's an interesting thing to think about. How do we keep living and loving without her? I think this is like a lot of people that have lost a loved one. You sort of feel like this. I will never be the same person I was before Abby was murdered. I grieve the life I used to have. I grieve the life I used to have. I feel sometimes that my own family has been cheated out of the version of me that existed before this crime. Right. So like she was a certain way, happy-go-lucky, etc. And then after Abby died, she's a totally different person and wishes that everybody else in her family could see her the way she used to be, and doesn't feel like it's right that they don't get to see, enjoy the way she was. I am grateful for my life. I owe my survival to my faith in God. Richard Allen took Abigail Williams' life on earth, but she had already given her heart to God. Believe that. Huh? Let's see. All right, guys, for the new people showing up, if you're out there and you can help support the channel, it'd be nice to get to 50% of the goal. So we need 27 more to get to the 50% mark of a goal. Wouldn't that be great? So if you guys can do the, get channel memberships for people or something. Man. Let's see. And then Judge Gold said, "Thank you, ma'am." Mr. McClellan said, "Judge, the state would call Eric Erskine." So I think that's her husband, the grandfather of Abby. "Sir, will you state your name, please?" Mr. Erskine said, "Eric Erskine, spelled Erskin. He is Abigail Williams' grandfather." And he has a statement. Let's see. Mr. Erskine, writing and speaking about the tragedy is very difficult. I'm not very articulate or creative when it comes to the spoken and written word. I'm kind of a bolt and wrench kind of guy. But I'll do my best to keep it brief. I thought his was good too. The effects and the loss of Abby these past 7 years in our family is beyond words. How this has impacted each of us and our daily lives is difficult to process or explain. Each family member was affected differently, but overwhelmingly the same, if that makes sense. The loss of Abby was like losing a limb. that'll never grow back. There's an empty spot or hollow place. This process has been similar to a wound that scabs over but consistently gets torn off, doesn't ever seem to heal. Thousands of times the possible scenario of the girl's last hour on this earth has been replayed in my mind. See, again, you're trying to picture what happened. Thousands and thousands of times. What was seen and heard in this trial only affirmed some of the most horrific thoughts. I'm thankful for God's grace in our lives that has carried us through these dark days. The effects of this horrendous crime has not only been a huge impact on our families, but has impacted this town. Not sure if we'll ever get back to normal from the dreadful murder of our girls. The impact on the girls' classmate at Delphi School was profound. Some are still in recovery from the trauma from this heinous crime. The horrific and senseless act by Richard Allen on February 13, 2013, which is supposed to be 17, may have stolen our future and what might have been with Abby Williams and Liberty German, but you, Richard Allen, will never take away our memories or the legacy of these girls. Something else that I'll never be able to understand is how, after lying wait and conducting your premeditated plan to have your way with our girls, how could you continue to go about your daily routine like it never happened? How could you do that? I'd like to take a moment to set the record straight on a couple of things that you, Richard Allen, have said. Richard, you said you found God. I hope you have. The fact is, God has been near all the time. He was not lost. You were. God was here before the earth was created, and you read about it in Genesis. Matter of fact, God was there on February 13th. You chose to live a life void of God and full of sinful desires. The book of Romans speaks of those. Some refer to this as a reprobate mind. The girls knew God. They accepted him at Bible school and church camp. I have no doubt they're in a better place. God gives each of us a free choice. The book of Deuteronomy speaks of it in a moment of selfish desires. Come on, you guys. We gotta get better in here. This is really a struggle. Some refer to this as a reprobate mind. The girls knew God. They accepted him at Bible school and church camp. I have no doubt they're in a better place. God gives each of us a free choice. The book of Deuteronomy speaks of it. In a moment of selfish desires, you made unconscionable decisions that is beyond my comprehension. Part of the Christian conversation process, which you admitted to, brings forth a change both in physical and spiritual. Part of that growth process comes accountability. Nearly 100, I think he's trying to convince him to confess. Nearly 100 different scriptures that I'm aware of speak of this. However, you chose to remain silent. When it counted most, you could have set the record straight. Scriptures are very clear. Hey, thanks so much, Super Soda. Remember, I think you're like really, how many months have you been? You're right around 60, aren't you? Scriptures are very clear. At the end, everyone will be judged by the Creator for their deeds and their actions. In closing, since the beginning of this journey, I've said I trusted the system. I've had faith in the body of work of our law enforcement and the prosecution team to do what's right on behalf of our girls, our families, as well as our community, to bring justice for all. Now, Judge Gould, we place that same trust in your decision-making authority to do what is right based on the laws of the state of Indiana. I believe your training and experience has prepared you for this task. You wouldn't have been selected to oversee this trial if you were not qualified. Thank you, ma'am. Judge Gould said, thank you. And Mr. McClellan, Judge, the state would call Becky Patty. Please will you state your name? Becky Patty, P-A-T-T-Y. She is Liberty German's grandmother. And you have a statement you'd like the court to consider for sentencing? Miss Patty said, I sure do. Let's see, what did that put us at? Hey, now we just need another 5 or another 10 to get to the 50%. As sad as that is. Yeah. And so, okay, go ahead, Mr. McClellan said. Then Miss Patty said, Honorable Judge Gould, where does one start? How does one explain the effect of how one choice a person makes has on an entire family for generations to come? I don't think one can really explain it and do justice. There's not enough words in our language that begins to paint a picture of the grief we live with each and every day. Richard Allen was an adult, and he should be held accountable for the choices he made on February 13th, 2017. He chose not to go to lunch with his mom and sister. Instead, he chose to drink beer for liquid courage. He chose to lay in wait for his victims, to order them down the hill. He had the opportunity to let Liberty German and Abigail Williams go when the white van drove by, but he chose not to. So instead, he chose to take them across the creek where he viciously murdered them. I actually think he went across the creek with them to continue what he was doing. He didn't kill them right when he went across the creek. So I think it's possible they were alive longer. The phone just didn't move. He had the opportunity to let Liberty German and Abigail Williams go when the white van drove by, but he chose not to. So instead, he chose to take them across the creek where he viciously murdered them, making sure they were dead before he went home and continued his life. Richard Allen viciously and heartlessly stole the choice to live from Abigail Williams and Liberty German that day. He was a coward and didn't want to be held accountable for his heinous choices and actions, so he just killed them and went home. I guess in his eyes, he was nice enough to make sure they were dead before he left so they wouldn't suffer. A few days later, he developed photos for our family that would be used at Liberty German's funeral. He stood there watching the family members as they struggled to keep their composure while dealing with insurmountable grief and preparing for the unthinkable that lay ahead. Not blinking an eye, no remorse. I wonder what he was thinking. Our lives turned upside down that day, never to be the same again. Abigail Williams and Liberty German, two young teens with their entire future ahead of them. They never got the opportunity to make their marks in the world. He stole, he stole that from them. Liberty German never got to go to prom, graduate, go on dates, go to college, get married, or start a family. She never got to be the best aunt ever. He robbed us all. The world was robbed of what could have been. All the while, he went on living his life. He was able to walk his daughter down the aisle on her wedding day, giving her away. I wonder, did he even think of our girls at all while walking her down the aisle? I bet he did. I bet you Richard Allen thought of what he did every single day, and that's why he turned into, I think that's just how it would be, right? And I think that's why he turned into Gollum, just kind of eating away at his soul every single day. Our families will never get the privilege of watching Abigail Williams or Liberty German walk down that aisle. He took that from us. The impact of Richard Allen's choices made that day has haunted our families for almost 8 years and continue even now. Because of choices he made and his subsequent arrest, he was appointed 2 lawyers to defend him. Those lawyers have done nothing but twist the knife around and around in our wounds that Richard Allen caused that day. Because of One lawyer's sloppiness sealed crime scene photos of Liberty German's naked and mutilated body were left unattended, allowing images to be taken and spread around to people on the internet. As recent as a week ago, these crime scene photos were still being shared on the internet for no good reason or for entertainment purposes. Sharing those photos changed nothing. It doesn't solve the crime. It doesn't bring the girls back. So now, because of Richard Allen's choices that day and his lawyer's sloppiness, the impact has now become generational for us. One day, when Liberty German's nieces or nephews decide they want to learn more about their aunt, Liberty German, they may be faced with those horrible crime scene photos that were so carelessly taken care of. I wonder if his lawyer would have been so careless with those photos had they been photos of one of his own children. Would he still have felt no accountability because he was snookered? And then you have the other lawyer, Brad Rosie, who sat in the judge's chambers stating he really didn't care that the photos were released. I wonder if he would have been so callous and uncaring if those were photos of his child's naked and mutilated body being shared. Would he still not care? When does it even stop? As recent as yesterday, the defense continued playing their games. They know law enforcement investigated their third-party theories with never being able to place any of these people at the trails that day. But yet they continued their charade at the expense of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. We don't even want to go there talking about hardship caused to the families. Richard Allen is not the victim. Now those professionals are allowed to claim no accountability for their actions and move on to the next case. And they're talking about these these attorneys that have YouTube channels, these defense attorney nut jobs. They're absolutely tricking people. You can tell by what they're saying. Richard Allen is not the victim. Now those professionals are allowed to claim no accountability for their actions and move on to the next case, disrespecting and devaluing the next victim's families. Meanwhile, our families are left picking up the pieces because of their choices and actions. In the end, all these choices made by the defense team, the fallout our families now have to live with for generations to come, falls directly on the head of Richard Allen. Let's see. Because of the choices he made on February 13, 2017. I could go on and on about what we lost that day, but it would change nothing. The deafening silence in the house, the milestones missed, the grandbabies never to sit on our lap, the impact of Liberty German and Abigail Williams would have had on so many lives. Talking about it won't bring them back to us. Nothing in this world can change the outcome of that horrific day. Could I read what? Naomi, what are you talking about? Read what? All right, you guys, I'm going to need your guys' support. We're still not at the 50% level, so if you guys are out there and you have the ability to help support the channel, I would appreciate it. Thank you. What timer? We were supposed to try to reach that goal to get the extra hour, but people don't, doesn't have an effect. Nobody really doesn't care or whatever. Not really sure what to say, but nobody's trying to reach the goal, so don't know. Yeah, we are currently at 7 out of 20, so. I don't even know where we are. Meanwhile, our families are left picking up the pieces. Let's see. Richard Allen, because of the choices he made on February 13th, I could go on and on about what we lost that day, but it would change nothing. The deafening silence in the house, the milestone missed, the grandbabies never to sit on our lap, the impact Liberty German and Abigail Williams would have had on so many lives, talking about it won't bring them back to us. Nothing in this world can change the outcome of that horrific day. No matter how hard we wish or pray them back, they're gone forever. Only Richard Allen, having made a different choice that day, could have changed it. Their lives were in the balance. He chose to kill Abby and Libby. Their lives mattered. He, Richard Allen, is the one responsible for all of this. All I can hope for now is that Richard Allen will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law for what he did that day. His sentence needs to reflect not only of murdering the girls, but also serving time for each day of the life those girls still had in front of them, for every feat they may have accomplished. I feel he should serve 1 day behind bars for each future day he robbed from the girls. Thank you, Naomi. I hope that he's not held in a single occupancy cell, since his attorneys feel it would be detrimental to his health. Let's see. I hope that he's not held. Right. I think if he's held by himself, it's not good for his health. I hope he is ordered to reside in general population, so he can have the human interaction he so craves and needs. Last of all, I hope he lives each day of the rest of his life living with the same fear he bestowed on Abby and Libby the last hour of their lives. I hope the choices he made on February 13th come back to haunt him, giving him no peace. I realize I should not feel this way, but I can't stop these feelings. I hope God can see my heart and can forgive me. Richard Allen caused this. I hope Richard Allen's new relationship with God will finally compel him to do the right thing and stop this nightmare from continuing any longer. Not only for families, but his as well. He needs to do what he knows God would want him to do. I hope he finally gives the girls the respect they deserve, give them back the dignity he so callously took from them. Richard Allen took so much from our families and the world that day, but what he will never take from us is our memories we have of Abby and Libby. We will forever keep them alive, if it's only in our hearts. I live every day with the burden of the choice I made on that day by letting him go to the bridge. All right, now where are we at now? So to get to 50%, we need 5 more bucks. Who's going to do it? Let's see. I live every day with the burden of the choice I made on that day. I can never change the results of my choice of letting those girls go to the trails, and I take responsibility for that. What about you, Richard Allen? Will you ever own up and take responsibility for the choices you made that day? Only you can stop this nightmare for all the families. You can make that choice. And then that was it. And that's when Judge Gold said, "Thank you, ma'am." Mr. McClellan said, "Judge, and lastly, the state would call Mike Patty, please." Hey, thanks, Ramsey. Hey, we got the 50% tonight. I need to play this. Thanks, Ramsey. Mr. McClellan, Judge, and lastly, the state would call Mike Patty, please. Will you state your name, Mike Patty, and will you spell it? P-A-T-T-Y, and how are you related to the victims? I was Liberty German's grandfather. Now the trolls will go, "No, that's her step-grandfather, his step-grandfather." Mr. McClellan, and you have a statement you'd like the court to consider in sentencing, is that correct? That's correct. All right, well, go ahead, sir. All right. First off, everything that's been said here today resonates. Kind of gives you a picture of what our families have been going through. Some of the stuff I've written down is going to repeat some of that, so I apologize. But all these things are coming from the heart, from all of our family members, and it's just the impact that this has had on our families. Honorable Judge Fran Gould, we appreciate your firm, fair guidance and direction, your ability to thwart off all unnecessary noise and acts that were deployed during this process. Thank you for standing firm and staying focused on what's needed to be done. I request you provide the maximum sentence allowed under our justice system, whatever that sentence is, but also have no possibility of parole. There's no parole available for our girls. For this, I will never forget. Prosecution, we appreciate your willingness to stay on task, putting the numerous hours, putting the case above many of your personal needs. The results speak for itself, and I wanted to share our deepest gratitude. For this, I will never forget. The investigation team, we appreciate your determination and grit to stay on this for so many years. I've observed and watched from the outside while you investigated so many tips that many have no idea about, all to deliver proof to the bottom of to get to the bottom of this case. Never once did I hear we're out of options. There was always a full court press to bring justice in this case. For this, I will never forget. To our family, I'm so blessed to have a loving and welcoming family. Only wish I could have prevented any of this from happening, and I wish I could have protected everyone from having to go through this. Our family is strong. We will march forward and continue to grow. For this, I'm grateful. Defense, I understand the role you needed to play, but I cannot connect the ways of our legal system to allow so many things to interfere with the truth and the facts simply to be brought before a jury. I cannot imagine our forefathers ever envisioned the attempts to suppress and divert facts that would ever be part of our justice system. One should reflect and review their position to support truth and justice. Your inept ability to protect some of the most personal facts in this case, the crime scene photos, and making statements you didn't really care that they were out there. My family will forever have to explain how these are available for people to search. What do I say to my kids, my grandkids, my great-grandkids? What will you tell your grandkids? What will you tell your grandkids? I hope you tell them the truth. I surely will. For this, I will never forget. To the convict, I will never understand how you could have conducted such an atrocity. You killed my granddaughter nearly 8 years ago and have only thought of yourself. Your attempts of self-preservation are a result of how you really are. Once you committed this crime, you could have been a man, stood up and taken accountability, but you didn't. At any time during these proceedings, you could have stood up and taken responsibility, but you didn't. You were only concerned about yourself and tried to get away with murder. Actions always speak louder than words. By being so selfish, you continued to punish and hurt my family. For this, I will never forget. Your act of murder has tested my faith. I'm still not ready to provide forgiveness. If I'm able to, it will be for my own faith and conscience, not for yours. For this, I will never forget. I've never felt such hatred, and I know I should not be this way towards another human being, but what you have done has impacted so many people's lives. We will heal with the help of our pastor. I'm lucky to have a great family. I have a great family and will enjoy the rest of my life helping and watching all of them grow, from our kids to our great-grandchildren. This is something you will not get to take away, and you'll never get to experience the joy and love as what my family has. Lastly, I hope the rest of your days are spent in as much fear as the girls had to experience in the last part of their lives. And I hope those moments haunt you the rest of your days. You deserve no better. Now is the time to stand up and take accountability. Put a stop to these future attempts for appeal. Just let the girls rest in peace. Mr. McLuhan said, "Thank you. Thank you, Judge. The state has no other witnesses or no other family members that would like to make an unsworn statement. The state would just reserve its right for argument, and that would conclude the evidence the state has for sentencing, Judge." The court said, "You may proceed, Mr. McClellan." Mr. McClellan said, "Thank you, Judge. Judge, as the court can see from the victim impact statements in the pre-sentence investigation and from the statements made here today, Abigail Williams and Liberty German were very special to a lot of people in the community." Yeah, let's get some more coffees, you guys. Gotta keep me awake. Almost falling asleep. Because my eyes are just like, you know. The court can see from the victim impact statements in the pre-sentence investigation and from the statements made here today, Abigail Williams and Liberty German were very special to a lot of people in this community. They touched a lot of people's lives, and everybody that they interacted with, they left a last impression with those people, from teachers to principals to community members. They were caring, loving, selfless, and two special little girls. The family endured 6 years without knowing who committed this offense. 6 years of torture until Richard Allen was arrested. And let's see. And at that point, there should have been a sigh of relief for the families, but there wasn't. After his arrest, YouTubers called them names. Countless podcasters accused them of being corrupt. See how disgusting that is, you guys? I mean, I actually can tell you that I'm not one of those people. Okay? And it's so disgusting. And if these people had ever known the family members, they would have done the same thing. But they didn't know the family members. And they might not have done it because, you know, people like Snay, for example, he did get along with the family, but they weren't giving as much as he'd like. You know, he just didn't feel like they were, you know. So he just switched over and believes a double child killer. Well, first he thought Ron Logan was the killer because it just couldn't be Richard Allen, of course. And then he switched over to defending a double child killer. We're all Rick Allen. No, you are, though. This case gained nationwide attention, and when the crime scene photos were released, they were victimized by that. Victimized by people sending them the crime scene photos or the crime scene photos being posted on various websites and web pages, all in an effort to get more clicks. And, right, exactly. And that's why I'm not getting a lot of views, because I'm not doing that. People want to watch the conspiracy nutters. Let's see. They were re-victimized by people sending them the crime scene photos or the crime scene photos being posted on various websites. Yeah, they wanted more views, etc. So the families continue to be victimized every day. Judge, as the families heard them state, even today, they continue to see those photos. This crime affected the community. It affected the community in a negative way. Many of the family members and many of the investigative team were born and raised in the community, and they can tell you that this was a quiet, safe place. I remember telling everybody that all the time. I'd say that used to be a place where they left their doors unlocked. After the murders, everybody locks their doors. As a little town in the Midwest America, after this crime, it became a place where people locked their doors, where people went and actively pursued a firearm license to carry and conceal, where they took defense classes. And I know, Judge, I know these aren't statutory aggravating or mitigating factors, but these are the things to consider, that Richard Allen's actions go well beyond what happened in this courtroom or what happened on February 13, 2017. They go on to affect the families of the victims, the families in the community, Judge. I think it's important to show that throughout this sentencing, throughout the trial, Richard Allen seemed to show no remorse and no regret. Now, as a mitigating factor, he does not have any criminal history. And I concede that's a mitigating factor. However, the nature and circumstances of this crime greatly outweigh any mitigating factor the lack of criminal history gives him. Judge, I know this was read during the trial, but I want to read the court a short excerpt from an entry by Dr. Monica Walla. This is an entry that seems to rattle around in my head days after the trial states. Not sure what that means. Allen reported wanting to confess to his crimes and wanting to tell his story. He stated, I bundled up. Once at the trail, I laid in wait. I saw the girls and followed them onto the bridge. I ordered them down the hill. My intention was to assault the girls because I thought they were older than their biological ages. He saw a van and got scared. Then I ordered them across the creek and I cut their necks. I wanted to make sure they were dead. He reported he covered the bodies and walked back to his car and continued on with his life. Because he hadn't been caught, he lied in wait. So it says because he hadn't been caught. And then it says he lied in wait. For some reason, that statement rings in my head. To think that Abby and Libby are just out for a walk on the trail that day, to take pictures, to enjoy nature, and to think he lied in wait for them, and then approached them with a gun, ordered them down the hill. He probably watched the video from Liberty German's phone. I probably watched the video from Liberty German's phone 1,000 times in preparation for trial. During the course of the investigation, and the fear in Abby's voice when she runs by Liberty German, I just can't imagine. Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. And then right after that, don't leave me up here. I just can't imagine the fear that they both had at that moment when he approached them with a gun and said, girls or guys down the hill. It definitely doesn't say girls. Once they're down the hill, he orders them to strip, 14 and 13 years old, to remove all of their clothes, expose their naked bodies. He began to assault them, but he was interrupted only to lead them across the creek and cut their throats. I just can't imagine what was going through their heads as he cut one of their throats and the other one had to watch while they were naked. I don't understand, Judge, and I just can't imagine. And then he walked calmly back to his car, and he lived his life here in our community for the next 6 years like nothing happened. No remorse, no regret. This is a man, if he's allowed out, he will kill again. He's a danger to our community, and he's the worst kind of danger. He's the kind of man that can kill 2 girls and then be so callous as to go on with his life like nothing ever happened. That is a dangerous man. So the nature and circumstances of this crime, Judge, in the state's mind, far outweigh any mitigating factors or mitigating weight that the lack of criminal history may give him. And so, with that being said, Judge, the state's recommendation is a fully executed sentence on both counts consecutive to one another, 65 years for the murder of Abby and 65 for the murder of Libby. The state would ask that those sentences run consecutive to one another for a total of 130 years in the Department of Corrections. The sentence only seems fitting for his actions on February 13th, 2017, and only seemed fitting for the murder of Abby and Libby. Thank you, Judge. Any response, Mr. Rosie? Mr. Rosie said, Judge, just briefly, that, the defense acknowledges that, this is a day for the victim's family to speak, and, the system affords them that opportunity. I do think, as Mr. Allen's counsel, that it is worth pointing out, or asking the court at least, to disregard the comments related to the actions of his lawyers throughout these proceedings, to the extent that those comments would support an aggravating or mitigating, or I should say aggravating circumstances. I don't think that they're relevant for that purpose. I don't have any problem with these people getting up here and speaking their piece, but to the extent that those would support an aggravator, I'm asking the court to disregard the comment. Thank you. And Judge Gould said, Mr. Allen, is there anything that you would like to say to the court prior to the imposition of sentence? No, Your Honor. And so then Judge Gould said, well, Mr. Allen, the record will show that you're here in person this morning with your attorneys, Mr. Rosie, Ms. Auger, and Mr. Baldwin. The state is here by the elected prosecutor, Mr. McClellan, and his deputies, Ms. Diener and Mr. Luttrell. Having been found guilty following a trial by jury, you are now here for sentencing. Having considered and reviewed the written pre-sentence investigation report, the sentencing memorandum submitted by counsel, the victim impact letters that were attached to the pre-sentence investigation report, the testimony of Trooper Holman, Kerry Timmons, Josh Lang, Diane Erskine, Eric Erskine, Becky Patty, and Mike Patty, and the arguments of counsel, the court now finds the defendant guilty of murder, a felony in count 3, and murder, a felony in count 4. The court will order the convictions on count 1 and 2, felony murder, vacated on the purpose of double jeopardy. Your attorneys, through their sentencing memorandum, have asked that I consider mitigating circumstances in your behalf. They have asked first that I consider that you have no criminal history, and that is, in fact, a mitigating circumstance, that you have no criminal history. Candidly, I don't weigh it terribly heavily because you come into this court convicted of the most serious offense that the state of Indiana has, but you do, in fact, have no criminal history. Your attorneys have also asked that I consider that your imprisonment will result in an undue hardship on your wife, Kathy Allen. I decline to find that to be a mitigating circumstance. Any imprisonment imposes a hardship, and you've been in prison for quite a bit of time, but I decline to find that to be a mitigating circumstance. Counsel has also asked that I consider the non-statutory mitigating circumstances that you served in the United States Army National Guard for about 10 years, having enlisted when you were in high school. I decline to find that to be mitigating circumstances. It has nothing to do with anything. That's how I talk. That's exactly the same sense. All right, guys, we're a little bit further into the show. If you're out there and you're watching and you have the ability to help support the Gray Hughes Investigates YouTube channel, I would appreciate it. Just trying to recoup some of the money because I had to pay $285 to get this document when I do the math. So I think it was like $190 or $90 for gas to pay somebody to go out there, and then also $180 or $195 or something for the document itself. Now, there was evidence presented during the course of your trial that you suffer from depression and anxiety. Let's see. And finally, your attorneys have asked that I can consider your long history of mental illness. There was evidence presented during the course of your trial that you suffer from depression and anxiety, and that is in fact a mitigating circumstance. However, I do not count it because there's no nexus between your mental health history and the vicious crimes that you have now been convicted of. So I decline to find that to be a mitigating circumstance, although I do recognize your mental health history, but there's no nexus. Those are all of the mitigating circumstances that have been advanced by your attorneys. I do find aggravating circumstances in the nature and circumstances of the crimes that you've committed. I don't need to go into a lengthy recitation. The record speaks for itself. I've been a criminal court judge for about 27 years, Mr. Allen, and I've presided over some of the most hideous cases in the state of Indiana. You rank right up there with one of those most hideous cases that I've presided over. The nature of the crimes that you have committed and the impact of your crimes on this family are astonishing. You have multiple victims, and that is an aggravating circumstance that justifies consecutive sentencing. And I find as a specific mitigating circumstances the extraordinary impact on the families of Liberty German and Abigail Williams. You know, the legislature assigns terms of years in their determination on what sentences should be. So the minimum sentence is 45 years, the maximum sentence is 65 years, and you rank right up there with the extraordinary impact on those families, and not just the specific family members that testified, not just the specific family members that submitted victim impact statements to this court, but I think it was Liberty German's grandmother who talked about generational impact, which far exceeds that which the legislature have determined to be significant. Candidly, I'd never really thought about generational impact. So I appreciate the opportunity provided by Liberty German's grandmother, Becky, to consider that. These families will deal with your carnage forever, and you sit here and you roll your eyes at me as you have rolled your eyes at me repeatedly throughout the course of this trial. The court would find that the aggravating circumstances are such that they require the maximum sentence consecutive. The court therefore orders that the defendant be committed to the Indiana Department of Corrections for classification and confinement for a period of 65 years on count 3 and a period of 65 years on count 4. As there are multiple victims, the court orders that those sentences be served consecutively for a net sentence of 120. It's actually supposed to be 130 in the Department of Corrections. Give you credit for 786 days served in jail and pretrial confinement. Assess the public defender fee and court costs and enter judgment accordingly. Mr. Allen, you've heard the judgment of this court pronouncing sentence pursuant to Criminal Rule 11. I would inform you, you are entitled to challenge both the conviction and the sentences. In order to do that, you have to file notice of appeal with the clerk of the Court of Appeals within 30 days of today's date. If you fail to timely file the notice, you forfeit or give up your right to an appeal. If you cannot afford an attorney, I will appoint counsel at public expense for the purpose of filing the notice of filing the notice of appeal and appealing the conviction and the sentence. Do you have any questions concerning your right to appeal? No, Your Honor. Will you be hiring an attorney to represent you, or do you need me to appoint a public defender? Just appoint, Your Honor. All right, I will appoint the public defender of the state of Indiana to timely perfect your appeal, and I will send the notice of the judgment of conviction to the state public defender so that she may begin the process. Is there anything else on the record, Mr. Rosie? No, ma'am. Mr. McClellan? Judge, I did file this morning a motion to seal and keep confidential the crime scene photos and the autopsy photos and the reports. I printed the court out a courtesy copy I did not get. I apologize, I did not get it done until early this morning. With the continued, I guess, exhibits of the crime scene photos on the internet, the state made the motion to seal those things permanently. The crime scene photos, the autopsy photos, and the autopsy reports, and also the mental health and the medical records of Mr. Allen as confidential. I think that's appropriate under the statute, Judge, that I cited. I think those are exceptions under IC 514.3.4 that can be exempt from FOIA and exempt from distribution. I want to make sure that the families are not continued to be re-victimized. This case is over. If anyone related to this case decides to release those autopsy photos or the additional crime scene photos or the mental health and medical records of Richard Allen, I think those things are privileged. I'd ask the court to consider. I understand the court may not be willing to make a ruling on that today, but I wanted to bring that motion to the court's attention that I did file that this morning. And then Judge Gould said, Mr. Rosie? Mr. Rosie said, Judge, I appreciate Mr. McClellan's thoughts in that regard. I did catch that motion as I was leaving the office this morning, so the defense is not conceptually burdened or troubled by those requests, but if the court would give us 7 days to just take a look at the statutes and the case law that's cited, I would appreciate that, and we will file a response. I think it'll be brief, but I'm not familiar with the statute and the specific case law that's cited, so I'd like a minute. The court said, okay, that's fine, yeah. Mr. McClellan, nothing further, Judge. Thank you. The court said, and based on now the conclusion of this case and the trial, the gag order that was previously issued by the court back in December is lifted, and counsel and the parties are relieved from further responsibility. Thank you very much, counsel. Mr. McClellan, thank you, Judge. Diener said, thank you, Judge. And then the defendant is committed to the Department of Correction. And there you go. That's it. So, there you go, everybody. All right. I don't really have any more to offer. Anyways, it's interesting to read that. I might make a version where there's different voices and AI voices, and I'll just put it out there or something. But, anyways. Thanks everybody for being here, and thanks Kami, Jamie S, Linda Howell, WNC Granny gifted a membership, Michelle Kishel, Cindy J, Richard Watts, Oops, Michelle Kishel, Sandy Shirley, Danielle Savoy, Timothy Cecil, Random Bogey, Stacy Pittman, Supa Soda, Naomi, and Ramsey. Really another just incredibly slow night. 3 in a row now. I thought we had gotten back on track, but it just went. And then we had, let's see, WNC Granny, Stacy, and Cassandra on PayPal. Then we had Michelle, someone, and then also Paulette. And also there was Alley Cat, like in between shows, on the Buy Me a Coffee. But man, you guys, not sure what to do. All right, everybody, thanks for being here. We'll see you guys later. Until next time, be safe out there. Yeah, I've been doing this true crime thing for quite a while now. And during this whole time, I have not seen one person that is a crime dissector. like rejector. I'm a certified human lie detector. Gonna get ya on a stretcher if you try and play me like an old projector. Crime sector is my nectar. Professor Grader's gonna give another lecture. Crime collector, freak connector, and I'm always gonna be a pup protector. Fool deflector, interceptor, and I'm meaner than a spectre with a vector on his pector. With all respect, y'all, just remember I've a temper fucking check ya. I have no agenda, I'm no pretender, and I'll serve it to you straight without the blender. And in the end, I'm gonna send ya on a mission to reveal the true offender. Yeah, so I'll just get right back to work. All right, everybody, talk to you later.
Correct.